Hello, everyone. Welcome to iCritic Live. This is the podcast where we talk about entertainment, pop culture, and life in between. I'm your host, Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net, and thank you so much for spending a few minutes of your time here with me today. Now, we actually had 2 episodes within a 48-hour, maybe 24-hour period. So if you missed our episode, which is our annual If We Picked the Winners special with Rachel from Rachel's Reviews, then I encourage that you listen to as well. That's a much longer episode, in my opinion, more fun to make. But we're going to talk about this thing that's going on with IMAX because Greta Gerwig, who is the director of movies such as Little Women, Lady Bird, and most notably Barbie, had signed on with Netflix to direct a couple of movies based on the Chronicles of Narnia. It is believed that the first movie she is directing will be The Magician's Nephew, which would make sense. There's never been an adaptation of that before. And then they'd probably make The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to kind of set the tone for all the future Narnia movies. But all that being said, she signed it with Netflix before Barbie became a huge hit. And afterwards, she said, hey, you know what? I kind of want a large, big screen theatrical release, to which Netflix said, no. And then I guess she threatened to quit the film. Netflix didn't want that egg on their face. And so they made a deal with IMAX to release the film for 2 weeks on Thanksgiving weekend, at which point the movie will not be available on Netflix until 4 weeks later. This gives IMAX some wiggle room to extend the 2-week agreement if it is successful. And by the way, I believe it will be very successful. I believe that they actually might make a substantial amount of money on this large format exclusive run. That being said, there are a lot of people not happy about this. In fact, the chains like Regal Cinemas and Cinemark, they're upset. And movie studios, particularly Disney, are upset about the Netflix IMAX deal. Now, this story was originally reported on Puck, but I'm going to be reading the information secondhand through the AV Club, which this article was written by Mary Kate Carr. And in it, it is written, Greta Gerwig did the impossible when she somehow convinced Netflix to book her a bunch of IMAX theaters for her upcoming Chronicles of Narnia movie. But the deal between the streaming giant and those giant screens has apparently ruffled feathers throughout Hollywood. According to the latest from Puck, everyone from the major studios to the theater chains has a problem with it. And some exhibitors are reportedly even threatening not to show the Narnia movie on their screens. We're talking about like Regal and Cinemark and things like that. Now, IMAX CEO Rick Gelfond has allegedly promised Netflix and Gerwig that the company has a nuclear option that will require exhibitors to show what IMAX wants on IMAX screens. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. However, angry theater owners, reportedly at Regal and Cinemark, feel that a brief 2-week run during one of the most profitable parts of the year, the premiere slated for Thanksgiving weekend 2026, is, quote, not anything that's sustainable in any shape or form, unquote, especially when other blockbusters are scheduled for release at the same time. Disney is reportedly furious as it has an animated movie scheduled for the same weekend and a Marvel film scheduled for a couple weeks before. Lionsgate also scheduled its next Hunger Games for around that time. Exhibitors could potentially try to circumvent IMAX and go for one of those movies instead. Quote, I struggle to see who would program Narnia over Moana 3 if that were to come out, a top theater exec told Puck. These large formats still only account for less than 20% of box office. It's not something that really works for our industry to support that, particularly with a studio that is not in our business. Now, that is an important quote, particularly with a studio that is not in our business, because Netflix has stated over and over again, theatrical is not in their future. They don't care about it. And heck, they even said, nah, this thing that we're doing here with Narnia, it doesn't signal a shift. It's just something we're doing for her. Like, everything's still primarily about Netflix. This is why their head of theatrical at Netflix left, because he was trying to get Netflix into the theaters to get more revenue. And Ted Sarandos, who still sees himself as a disruptor of some sort, basically keeps saying no. It's very fascinating, by the way, that he crossed one of his lines, which was no ads on Netflix, but he doesn't want to cross the line here. Go figure. Anyway, continuing the article. The thing is, pretty much everyone wants Netflix to get into the theatrical game. A rising tide lifts all ships, and if Netflix did more theatrical releases, it would be good for the whole ecosystem. An ecosystem that Netflix's business model has threatened to eliminate. Quote, this has been a perplexing misdirection from Netflix in exhibitors' minds for years, a veteran theater executive told Puck. Exhibitors are kind of fed up with Netflix sticking their toe in the water and pulling back. Apple and Amazon have tried real theatrical runs with mixed success, but they made a real attempt and Netflix never has. By the way, I want to comment on how Apple and Netflix tried real theatrical runs with mixed success. The reality is every movie studio year tends to have mixed success because they will have their hits and then they will have their flops. I mean, last year, Inside Out 2 was the highest grossing film of the year, I believe, or at least one of them. But now this year, Captain America, Brave New World, which I just saw yesterday, maybe 2 days ago by the time you're listening to this, and I thought it was fine. Frankly, it was fine. It wasn't great. It was just like, whatever. It is what it is, I suppose. And it's probably going to lose some money, so that's just always ups and downs. And so I think Apple and Amazon, they need a little reality check when it comes to look, you got to put all your movies in theaters, at least the ones that feel like they are worthy of theaters. There's a couple movies they make where it's like, how dare you try to put that in theaters? But for the most part, it's like, look, I think F1 from Apple for coming out, I believe that's going to be a big hit. I believe that will be a hit. But Fly Me to the Moon, well, that was probably never going to be a huge hit. I think Wolves would have been a good theatrical hit, but then they chickened out on that one. So, continuing this article, though, there's a lot of time between then and now, though, and Puck sources suggest IMAX has already cut a deal to show Narnia with AMC, which owns more IMAX theaters than any other chain in the country. The rest may fall in line to get a piece of the pie, especially if the Narnia pie is as lucrative as Gerwig's Barbie was. Only time will tell. Now, here's the thing. I think that the Narnia movie will be a huge success, especially if it's only in IMAX screens for a couple weeks. Anyone who wants to watch it, they're going to have to go to see it within those 2 weeks, and guess what? They're all going to be paying premium ticket prices. So I believe that that will be very lucrative. It's not going to bring in the reported $200+ million that Netflix has spent on it. It won't be that successful, but you're talking about a movie that will have a higher per screen average than anything else. But I also understand where the studios are coming from. The studios, Netflix is not a player. They're basically always disrupting, and as Scott Mendelson had pointed out in a live chat that I did with him, basically Netflix is doing this to hurt the movie studios. They know that by getting IMAX screens during that weekend, that hurts the movie studios because they have movies that they want there. And Netflix has essentially blocked them all for business they are not interested in getting into. Netflix has always made it clear that they want the theaters dead. They are not the movie theaters' friends. And whatever they do to hurt the movie theater. So this is a way for Netflix to basically piss off the studios who work with the movie theaters. And I can guarantee you Disney's going to try to pull a stunt like they did with the Cinerama Dome years ago, when Cinerama Dome the whole theater's closed now, unfortunately, the ArcLight. But their Cinerama Dome theme was their big screen. It was their crown jewel. And Quentin Tarantino had signed a deal to play The Hateful Eight at that screen. Well, Disney came in and pressured ArcLight and said, hey, if you don't put Star Wars on that screen, as well as the other screens you're putting it on, we're not going to give you the movie at all. And of course, the ArcLight caved. So Disney will probably try to do that. And if that animated film that's untitled is Moana 3, which it wouldn't surprise me, honestly, I think they were probably making that third one before the second one's even finished because it was a TV show. So they might have, you know what I'm saying? They might have had some of 3 already made before 2 was even released. So that could be it. And if I were an exhibitor, I would probably hesitate a little bit about putting Narnia in the IMAX when Moana is right there. But that being said, people will still see Moana. And Narnia is probably a big enough name where it's like, if you could be one of the theaters that claim that you have Narnia because no standard screen has it, like, hey, we've got Narnia, we've got Aslan, we've got The Witch, come see it, and we're one of the few places you could see it. I could see them saying, well, you know what, we've already got Moana on the Dolby screen, on the Prime screen, we already have her on the 3D screens. We can give Narnia the IMAX screen. And by the way, if AMC has signed on to do that, because AMC does have Prime and Dolby and all that stuff, I can guarantee you Aaron Adam is thinking like, yeah, we'll schedule Narnia for IMAX, and then whatever other major movies are coming out that week, we'll put them on our other premium screens, and we'll have premium screens for all the movies. And then what if AMC is the only one that has Narnia? Well, people who want to see Narnia, they're obviously going to go to AMC. So that might pressure Regal and Cinemark. And by the way, I think Cinemark has like the least amount of IMAX screens. It might pressure them to follow suit. Now, here's the other thing though. Like the Cinemarks near me, like the XD screens and stuff, those never show IMAX movies. Like, if Disney or Lionsgate or the Hunger Games wants to be on those premium screens that week, they can. And you know what? I would probably see them there. I mean, I always default to IMAX for a premium screen. But if IMAX doesn't have that movie and another premium screen does, I'll go, yeah, okay, I'll go to that premium screen. Because I'm going to tell you what, an XD screen, while not as good as an IMAX, is better than a standard screen. A Dolby Cinema screen, while not as good as an IMAX, is better than a standard screen. And a Prime screen is probably the weakest of all the premium experiences. But hey, it's still a slightly bigger screen than a regular screen, and it's still part of AMC Stubs A-list. So sure, I'm going to see that there if that's an option. Heck, I've seen some anime movies on AMC Prime screens, which Crunchyroll does not go after the premium screens unless it's Dragon Ball. But AMC will typically put a Hayuku on the Prime screen, or a Jujutsu Kaisen Episode 0, although I think that was an IMAX now that I think about it. So anyway, that's explaining why people are a little upset at IMAX. And here's the thing. I also don't feel bad for the studios, because you know how often the studios screwed over the movie theaters? Like, they get mad whenever AMC says, oh, we're like launching the Taylor Swift concert and we're launching the Beyonce concert, and they're like, well, you didn't tell us, we have movies coming out. It's like, well, you know what you guys didn't do during the COVID-19 pandemic? You're the ones who blindsided everyone by saying, hey, Trolls World Tour is going to be a premium video on demand experience. Disney was the ones who said, hey, we're going to put Luca and Turning Red and Soul and Artemis Fowl on Disney Plus instead of theaters. Heck, remember how we were going to make Mulan the big return to the theaters? Yeah, that's going to Disney Plus as a Disney Plus on demand thing. Oh, Black Widow, it's going to theaters. And you can also watch it at home for $30 on Disney Plus. I don't feel too bad that movie theaters do these things when it's like, hey, here's an opportunity for us to release a special event movie and potentially get a lot of people to come. And the studio's like, well, you didn't tell us, we're pissed. And it's like, well, yeah, I bet you they were pissed too when you backstabbed them. So maybe you shouldn't have been backstabbing them in the first place. Now, whether or not this will work in the long run, we'll have to see. And will the box office be enough to get Netflix to give the next Narnia movie an even bigger push? I can tell you right now, with how expensive these Narnia movies are, if they do this 2-week IMAX theatrical run and they make $50 to $70 million on just that IMAX 2-week run, I can guarantee that the shareholders are going to be getting up at those quarterly meetings and asking Ted Sarandos, so you're going to do a 3,000 screen push for the next Narnia movie, right? We might actually make $500 million. It could happen. So it's a very interesting situation. I can see why everyone out there has mixed feelings. You know, it is a little rotten that IMAX basically gets away with bending the rules all the time. And we should probably do an episode talking about all the things that IMAX has done that is against conventional wisdom, that is against etiquette, but that they're kind of given a blind eye, even though these decisions they make basically undermine the whole theatrical industry. But if you are listening to this and you have your own thoughts on this, what do you think? Are you going to go see Narnia in IMAX? Do you think the studios have a point? Do you think the theaters should book Narnia? If you're listening to this podcast on a place where there are comment section, we would love to hear in those comments. Also, if this is your first time here and you like what you are listening to, why don't we make it official? Subscribe to this podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple, Deezer, YouTube, all the major podcasting platforms. And as always, I'll see you at the movies. Take care. Hey, you made it to the end. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Just a few more things. First of all, the names that you see on the screen, these are our Patreon and YouTube member supporters. And I thank each and every one of them. Their support helps me make exclusive videos for Patreon and YouTube members, as well as keep the channel running. And of course, is just of huge kindness to me. Also, don't forget to check out the iCritic-led podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, Deezer, whatever podcasting service you listen to. It is there. We definitely want to see you there. And hey, there's also other videos that you can check out. So, check out these other channels, these other videos, especially that one. I think that's a really good one.